right, well, it is 10 o'clock and we are going to go ahead and get things started. My name is Jade Irving. I get to be the program coordinator for the First Two Network, and you are at the Connecting Professionals Across Institutions session. This morning, we have some phenomenal STEM professionals with us that we are going to be hearing from. And I've also told one of the facilitators to pick on Scott Goddard from Davis and Elkins. So happy to see you here, Scott. Just a few quick housekeeping announcements. Please make sure that you're on mute if you're not speaking or asking a question. Please feel free to use the chat box. This session is being recorded and will be made available to you at the conclusion of the conference, and you will receive an email when all of our conference resources are available. Congratulations to all of our graduates. I think we might have some of our graduates on this call right now. If you could just use the reaction and just do a hand clap emoji in the corner to say congratulations to our graduates. We are incredibly proud of you. Looking forward to hearing from our students at the next session, at which time we'll watch a presentation in honor of our graduates from the First Two Network. So I think I've said enough. At the end of this session, I just remembered this, at the end of this session, we'll ask you to do a quick survey. It'll take maybe a minute and a half for you to get through that, but it's just something to let us know what you got from this session and how great it was. So with that, I am going to kick it off to Sue Ann, the lead PI of the First Two Network, for our panelists to introduce themselves.
Thank you very much. And I'm Sue Ann. I work at the Green Bank Observatory, and my partner in crime facilitating this session is Deb Himmler from Fairmont State University. So I'm just going to set the stage a little bit and remind everybody about what we are. You've been hearing this a lot over the last 2 days, but the First Two Network is a learning network, and we are coming to the end of year 3 in forming this beautiful group of people who have this shared aim to improve persistence of first generation STEM students and underrepresented STEM students in our state. And as we've come to the year 3, we're learning that there are some really key areas to focus on. And the first one is that without students who are STEM majors at the table, lending their perspective and their ideas to improve the institutions that serve them, we're not going to have lasting change. So student voice is really powerful and important and key to this whole experiment working. We also know that students who engage broadly in internships and in the workforce that they want to be a part of when they graduate is highly motivating to help them persist through challenges at their institutions that might cause them otherwise to leave their major. Having a great relationship with faculty is important too. If you're comfortable with your STEM faculty, you're going to be more likely to seek the help that you need when you need it. And having a student community that helps each other is really important to us as well. And then finally, getting some exposure to what it might be like to be a STEM professional in an industry setting out there in the world, we think is really important too. So we have reached out today for this session to our STEM professionals at our partner institutions who serve in more of an administrative capacity in addition to, I'm sure all of our panelists wear many hats, but one of those is to do administrative duties too at their institution to give their perspective on these areas that we found to be really important for STEM persistence, find out how it works at their institutions and what we can learn from each other. So we're going to start out today by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to pick on Chuck first. So Chuck, take it away. And I think you know what you're going to say. We want your name, role, institution you represent, years working in STEM, and why you're passionate about STEM student retention.
Gotcha. Thanks very much for the invitation to be here today. I'm Chuck Somerville. I am Dean of the College of Science at Marshall University. I graduated for my undergraduate program in 1978. So I've been working in STEM for 43 years. I went straight out of my BS degree into working in a laboratory, marine sciences laboratory in Virginia. Eventually went back to graduate school, but I've been working in science for 43 years. So for some of you, that may seem like that I'm too old to be relevant. But what I really ought to say to you is that science is so exciting that it can carry you for just, decades of time. So why am I passionate about science? It's like when you ski down a really good trail and you want to bring everybody else and say, hey, come follow me. This is so cool. This trail is so much fun that you got to do it. And so that's why I want to bring everybody along, because it's been such a great ride for me. I have lived and worked all over the world because of my engagement with STEM. I've lived in France. I've been all over the United States working in different laboratories. And I worked for the Air Force for a while. I worked for the Army for a while. I've worked for institutions of higher education now for about 25 years. So anyway, it's been so much fun to explore the world, and also to explore what I find exciting about STEM is that when you do research on a subject, you get to know things before anybody else in the world knows those things. You get to discover things that nobody else has ever seen before. And I find that to be just incredibly exciting. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Chuck. That was wonderful. Let's hear from Sarah Sawyer next.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sawyer. I'm currently chair of the Department of Science and Mathematics at Glenville State College. And I say currently because at the end of this week, my term will be over. And I'm professor of biology here, and I'm trying to think. I've been teaching for about 20 years, I would say, at a couple different places. And passionate about STEMs. I don't know, I just love biology, and I love explaining biology to people and turning on the processes of life and how things work. And I love it when students get that aha moment. Just want to see more students be successful at it.
Very good, thank you. Jose, Dr. Toledo, do you want to go next?
Yes, good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for the invite to be here amongst all of these wonderful young people and all of you professionals. My name is Jose Ulysses Toledo, and I am the Vice President for Research and Public Service at West Virginia State University, but I'm also the Dean of the land-grant programs. And I've been in this role for 21 years. And so I have interacted with STEM-related disciplines. I have an engineering degree. I have a plant science degree, natural sciences and environmental sciences. So that's my background. So I'm all over the place as it relates to STEM. I know how important STEM is. And just like Dr. Somerville mentioned, it's a cool ride to be in this STEM field. And we would like for all of you to join. And the United States is suffering currently from more graduates in the STEM field. So we need to get up there and get those numbers so we can compete with the rest of the world. We're slacking a little bit. And so that's why I think it's so important that we encourage young people like yourselves to be in the STEM fields. First generation, I'm a first generation student. And so I can relate with all of you who are in this space. And we have challenges, but we can overcome. Preparation is the key. And so I'm happy that you are pursuing the STEM degrees, and we're here to help you. So if you ever need any advice, please reach out to me, to any of the panelists. The doors are open for you. I'm always approachable. Send me an email or call me and I'll be I'll be sure to provide any advice that I can. So that's what I'm passionate about, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Duncan Lorimer, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Sue Ann. Good morning, everybody. My name's Duncan Lorimer. I am a professor of physics and astronomy at West Virginia University. The Green Bank Observatory is what drew me to West Virginia. I've been at WVU since 2006, so almost 15 years to the day, actually, since we arrived. Throughout that time, in fact, I've spent a lot of time working with Sue Ann at Green Bank, and astronomy is my passion. That's what drew me into STEM. I currently have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Dean for Research in the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences here at WVU. So I'm trying to kind of give back a bit of what I've been able to receive, as a STEM researcher, student, and a professor over the years back to the university and students. So I've been working in STEM since I graduated from undergrad. That was 31 years ago. Like Chuck and others have said, it provides so many great opportunities. I've been fortunate to go all around the world and work at many great observatories and meet amazing people and experience cultures that are well beyond what I grew up with. I think it's really important for as many people to embrace that, and it just takes time for people to develop. In my experience, I knew what I wanted to do, I knew what I wanted to study, but I didn't have the tools initially to be successful. So I was fortunate enough to get some chances, and people made allowances for me, and I think it's really important to really try to make sure that you're reaching out to this broad audience that can just so we create as diverse an environment as possible, so that as many people are able to experience these discoveries, and that will undoubtedly improve the whole process, just bringing all these perspectives. So that's my passion these days, and really happy to be here, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. And finally, we'll round out our panel with Dr. Stephen Roof from Fairmont.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Roof. My standard joke is, don't worry, I got everything covered. Some people get it, some people don't. If you get it, congratulations, 2 brownie points for you in my class. I'm currently serving as Dean of the College of Science and Technology here at Fairmont State. I've been at Fairmont State 27 some years, only 3 playing administrator. I spent 5 years working at the Dow Chemical Company as a microbiologist in between undergraduate and grad school, and then spent way too much time in education. So add it all up, do the math, probably about 40 some plus years in the STEM fields. Looking at my little chat list here, it says, why are you passionate about STEM student retention? That was one of the questions we were asked. Take a little different tack here from my fellow panelists. Why retention? Why do we want to keep STEM students? Well, obviously some of it's self-serving. We're in this business and we need students. So there is some self-serving there. We need students to keep our business running, but that leads to my question, why am I in this business? And I'm in this business because it's a hell of a lot of fun. Education is a lot of fun. STEM is a lot of fun. And sharing that, like the other panelists, sharing that passion with science is a blast. There's a certain amount of creativity that you get to bring to science that I don't think you can bring in other fields. And so we need as many people as possible with as many new ideas as possible to move this whole field forward, to move the country forward. So off to the questions.
Very good. Thank you. Deb, take it away.
Sure thing. So Sue Ann mentioned that what is important to us is student voice. So I think that's a great place to start with our first question. So this is kind of a two-parter. How does your STEM department ensure that rural first-generation STEM students have the opportunity to share their experiences and realities with administrators, faculty, and support staff? And then how can we facilitate the translation of student input into changes in the department? or school or institution. Anybody want to start?
I'll jump in first and give the other people a chance to think. Fairmont State is one of the partners on the first two grant, and Dr. Erica Harvey, as most of you know, in chemistry, was one of the people who pushed this in the beginning. So that's probably what got us started. But I think historically, we've always had a very friendly, student-centered faculty. That's one of the things you get at a smaller institution. No offense to all you folks at the bigger institutions. With a somewhat open door policy, everyone has that open door policy. A number of first gen professors to begin with. I'm not one of those, but we do have a number of those. I'm looking at my notes here. I think one of the things that the First Two Network has actually helped us with is putting students first and actually consciously asking, what do the students think? What, as opposed to assuming we know what your answer is, let's actually ask you what the question is and then listen to the answer.
I'll go next. So West Virginia State University is a relatively smaller institution to like Stevens Institution, Glenville. Student voice is a paramount importance as it relates to success. First of all, we need to make sure that we understand what are you saying, what are your needs are. So we need to identify, first of all, for those of you who are first generation, what are your challenges that are different from other students that might not have those same challenges? Then we need to provide an environment that invites you to want to provide that feedback. Because if we don't have that environment, it's going to be difficult for you to communicate. So, so we need to, we want to facilitate, we do facilitate that conversation. Here at State, we have wonderful professors that are very engaged with the student population. Dr. Michael Falls, maybe some of you interacted with him. Barbara Little, very approachable professors. So we want all the professors to be able to welcome you in for you to voice your concerns and your challenges so that we can work together to solve them. And because at the end of the day, what we want to do is for you to graduate, to be successful. And after graduation, to make sure that you have all the tools to go to the industry that you want to go. So that communication, that is student voice, in my opinion, is extremely important.
Yeah, I'll echo things that folks have said so far, and also add that I think access is kind of the key. We want students to be able to get to us without restrictions, and so I kind of think of it as leaving as many doors and windows open as possible, and then whatever access route a student finds open to them at when they need it, we try to remove all the barriers. And we've got several. I'll just mention one right now, which is professional advisors. Every student is required to have advising it when they come in as a freshman, and those advisors form special relationships with students. They become more than just a technical person who you see. They become a sounding board for, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? They help not only find the right courses, but also talk about what the challenges are going to be, and then help the students find the pathway that helps them get to where they need to be. So I'll just say that's one of the many windows that we leave open. I'm sure folks will talk about others.
So for Glenville, we are a very small school, and so student voice, students are paramount for us here, and the interactions, because we have small classes. We have great interactions, I think, with our students, but I would say Glenville, one of the reasons I've gotten involved with the First Two Network is learning about how we can be better at it and more purposeful about hearing from students. So we haven't had a first generation club on the campus. And so one of my goals in the fall is to start one and convert what has been without official name of it, Christian Student Club, but make it an official one, got a biochem club, and we'll just make it a first gen STEM club to get better student voices and to get a better direct path, because we've always had a completely open door policy for our students here, but I'm not sure we've always been, we can be better, we can always be better.
I think what Sarah just said about the student clubs is a really important point. That's a really good way to connect with the students. And when I was looking at these questions just before the hour, I was writing down, within the different departments that we have on campus, there's always at least one or two student clubs, and that's just a nice way to interact with faculty outside of the normal office hours and just general sort of class administrative experience. So we need more. We really need to do more of that, I would say. And the departments that really have embraced that are the ones that really are reaching out to students and getting that voice.
Anyone else? So we do have a question in the chat that relates to this, and actually a follow-up question, and it came from Sarah Riley. And she asks, as administrators, what could a structure look like where first-gen students could share systemic challenges directly with administrators? And how often should they do this? Once a year, once a month?
So COVID has kind of screwed everybody in lots of different ways, and it has really impacted our ability to meet face to face. And, we can blame everything on COVID, damn it. I also say never waste a good crisis. And this is a crisis, which is forcing us to rethink a little bit. So in response to Sarah's question, I think frequency is probably once a month at a minimum. Maybe a little bit more than that. What it should look like in my brain would be either the student clubs like Sarah's talking about, or a meeting in the student center. Offices are intimidating, classrooms are intimidating. We need to get out of the offices in the student center. And I've generally found that if you bribe students with food, they tend to show up. And students going, yeah, that's the way it works. So something along those lines, and that's not something we could have done over the past year. But given the reopening of campus and how we're hoping things go in the fall, I think it's time to rethink that.
I think that's a great suggestion. Deb, are you going to go on with that follow-on question there from Aida?
Yeah, sure. Another question that's popped up. Do any of you meet regularly with faculty, leads, students, and or other interested parties? For example, first gen experience programs to help develop integrated services. So Aida is interested in developing campus support, but she's not sure how to get it going.
I'll just chime in for Marshall. I think the challenge there is first gen students are cross-cutting. So first gen students may be commuter students, they may be in the dorms, they may be biology students, they may be chemistry students. So it's difficult to reach into the student population and just touch the first gen students. So I think that's a challenge I'd love to hear other people address. One of the ways I've found that has been effective is to have this representatives from my college who are in student government come and meet with me once a month. So they get to hear, they kind of are, they roll up what they hear in discussions in student government, and then they bring that to me. And also they're interacting with other students in their classes and in their social lives. So they're kind of aggregators for information that help me get a handle on what's going on. But it's not, I wouldn't say specific to first gen students. And I would love to hear ways that folks have found some good processes to specifically target that group. I think it's a big part of our population, and we want to make sure that we're responding to their concerns.
Just to add to the conversation, so through this particular project, the First Two Network, we have identified or we have champions like such as Dr. Mike Falls and Barbara Little that are coordinating the activities related to first generation. So that was a first great step in the right direction. So obviously we need to do more of that. We need to continue that so that we can pay particular attention to these the first generation students and also minority students as well. So to my knowledge, there is not a faculty forum yet where they talk about these issues, but definitely this program has brought the, I will say the basis for us to build upon something bigger. And definitely, we all know that this type of endeavors are beneficial to all of us. So yes, me as an administrator, I want to do as much as I can to make sure that this continues. And you know, our job is to provide resources and to gather the troops, if you would, so that we can have that forum that will allow for these student voices to be collected, for these faculty to be more receptive and more aware of these issues that we have that we need to overcome.
Thank you, Jose. That's very good. So, and I am seeing in the chat that there is a First Gen Day, Celebration Day in November, which might be a great time to launch a first generation student initiative there. And I was interested to hear, Chuck, you talk about that you are connected with your student government. Maybe there should be a first gen rep in student government for you too.
Yeah, I agree.
That's been discussed here. I don't think it's happened yet, but it's under discussion.
Very cool. I'm looking in the chat. I'm seeing that some of these other questions are kind of related to other things, I believe, and some really pointed questions too about one final one here before we move on to our next topic, perhaps is wonder what it would take to identify our first gen students at every institution, at every school. I know that maybe this process is different from school to school. Are your students identified as first gen when they come in? Is that part of your data collecting process?
I'll speak for Glenville because it's something we're working on. It is collected, but it is buried in the financial stuff that, like, most people, like as an advisor, I can't find that. I don't see that information. It's something that we've talked about, making it more overt so that we're, it's easier to find and you don't have to have a special person on the campus run a report for you.
Got it.
So at West Virginia State, I'm working with a scholarship right now, and I receive reports from students enrolling in the recruitment office as well, and we ask them to self-identify themselves as it relates to first generation. One of the issues that I see is that not every student that might be first generation feels comfortable to identify themselves that way, or maybe they don't really know the definition. So I think we're missing a few there, but for the most part, I've seen that data rolling as it relates to my campus.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that direct question before we move on?
I can chime in a little bit.
Hey, Scott. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you this morning. I really think we need to touch on what happens before and after the student's time on campus. I think it's safe to say that everyone on the call this morning entered the profession of higher education to make a difference in the lives of the students. Well, I think it can be more than that. And I heard throughout the conversation this morning that it's bigger, it's bigger, it's bigger. Well, it is bigger. So where I'm going here is the Upward Bound program. I know that an Upward Bound exists on a number of your campuses. They identify and start working with those first generation students in high school and provide academic and life coaching. That is key because that ultimately provides hope and what's possible. Okay, get them on campus. That Upward Bound staff member is there, still there to support them along with all the other support networks on campus. Okay, then they graduate. And I believe that this is also across the board for everyone on the call this morning. The sincere hope is that they will enter the local community and stay in West Virginia and make a difference. So through the work of everyone on our respective campuses, you're not only making a difference in the life of the student that is in front of you, but also in their family, in their community, and in West Virginia. It is bigger. And I think that's what's exciting, is not only are we making a difference in the life of one person, we're making a difference across the board. So, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's through relationships and working with the students, working with their families. Let's just be realistic. The college terminology is confusing. Registrar's office, what's that? FAFSA, what's that? Well, we need to step up and help there. And that's where, again, everybody working together, rowing in the same direction. There's power, there's opportunity, and be honest, that's what keeps me going every day. That's what gets me coming up the hill to the office. And I'll admit, I'm a little out of my element on this call. I'm not in a STEM profession. I don't have the periodic table in my office. I've got a picture of Flogging Molly and Vanilla Ice that performed on campus. So come on now. But it's meeting the students where they are and supporting them every step of the way. So that's enough for me. I'm going to shut up now.
Thanks, Scott. I do want to say that Carol Suter-Howes joined us in college readiness yesterday. So we're really excited to have Upward Bound part of our working group.
Scott, that's actually a great segue to our next sort of broad topic as well. And I'm going to take that one and do the question that is in line, and then I'm going to dip down into the additional questions that is related to this one too. So we at First Two Network recognize exactly this need to broaden out and create an environment where these different services are connected for our students. And so if your institution, or if you know anything about how it works at your institution, how do you engage individuals across your different departments or units to work together on systemic factors that impact STEM persistence? We'd love to hear about that. And if you don't really have some sort of coordinated way, what are some ways for this cross-department campus engagement to start to happen? So again, it's a two-part question. How do you engage individuals across the different departments and units to address STEM persistence? And what are some ways that this could happen for this cross-department campus engagement to happen? So who would like to go first on that one?
I could take a crack at it, Sue-Ann.
Thank you.
Just let you know what we're, just because that's something that I'm working on, and I'm learning a lot through this call, because I'm not quite as high up in the administrative chain to know about all of the questions that are going on. But for this particular one, I am working this summer with faculty around our college to host our first undergraduate research symposium. It's actually not just STEM, it's other fields as well. And the idea is a little different to the normal research symposia, which are great, and they give away, they provide a forum for students to, give their have their voices heard and so on. But in terms of like trying to improve enrollment and reach a diverse population, what we thought we would do is to tap into students from outside of our institution while they're undergraduates, and try to look at ways as not just in improving the undergraduate program, but thinking about building this into the graduate recruitment as well. And so we're in August, we'll have students from all around the country. Thanks to COVID, we can do it online. They'll present their research. They'll be freshmen, sophomores, and all the way through the undergraduate experience, coming to us virtually to present, and we'll be giving them campus tours and things like that. So it is a fun experience. I'm going to be very busy with it during the summer, so I'm engaging with about 9 different departments around campus, and so that really brings us all together. It forces us to talk about the issues that are germane to our own programs. Some departments have different enrollment problems than others, and but diversity is just a huge common denominator for the whole group. So that's something that we're trying, and I'll certainly be sharing the experiences with that once the event is here in August. For instance, we reached out to all of the REU programs across the country, and so we kind of hit this population that we wouldn't have otherwise kind of thought of, really. So it's exciting, yeah.
Who else wants to weigh in on that question? What are some ways you are thinking about cross-department campus engagement?
So I'll give one example. I think in my mind, one of the most important things we can do is get students excited early. And that means that K-6 teachers, really K-4 teachers, have to be excited about science if students are going to think that they see themselves in science in the future. So the attitude in those places has to be science is for everybody. Math is for girls. It's all accessible, and nobody should be excluded from that. And so we've actually created a position that is shared between the College of Science and the College of Education, specifically for training students or teachers in training who are going to be teaching K through 4, or really elementary school. And that position is a teacher who has a PhD in physics, but has a really good handle on kind of engaging with students who are going to become teachers in a way that those subject areas are not intimidating, and they're not difficult, and they're not just a box you have to check, but it's excitement. And we feel like if we pass on that excitement to those teachers, they will pass it on to their students. And that is one of the things we think is going to create more students who see themselves potentially as scientists. They can choose something else, but they shouldn't exclude themselves from science early on just because they think it's too hard, or because their teachers feel like it's been too hard for them. That's just one of the things.
Thank you, Chuck.
Okay, this is Steve. I'll jump in real quick. Reaching across departments, I think one of the things we all realize is that, especially in the STEM disciplines, there is a set of common courses that the students take. And dare I say math, and watch everyone cringe, math and chemistry are common courses that students in all the STEM disciplines take. And so we are trying to encourage those faculty who teach those intro courses to be more aware of the student population that's in those courses. The other thing that I'm trying to do, which is relatively new here, is like get a more information out of our data folks of where do these students go. So if I have 40 pre-dental students who start out in the freshman year, and then 5 years later I have one who's applied to dental school, where did the other 39 go? And trying to get faculty to think about it's not necessarily making sure that you enroll your chemistry program. It's also making sure we can retain those students even if they change their major to sociology.
As a related question, we at the First Two Network would love to see collaborations between departments and between support services too. If you've got an Upward Bound program at your school, Scott, I'm glad you brought that up. How do you collaborate between programs like that or student support programs and our STEM departments? So we'd love to see these collaborations between departments happen and persistence work be rewarded in our institutions. If you're a faculty person that's devoting some portion of your time to this problem. So we'd like to know what the obstacles are to this idea of cross-department collaboration in your mind, and any of your thoughts on how we can work together to overcome those obstacles.
I have an opinion more than anything else. So one of the things that I see, and so just as a disclaimer, so I'm not totally involved with the academic role, more on the research side, but nonetheless, I interact with the faculty members that are, and I see and I hear, and I work with all departments across the institution. So one of the things that I notice is the fact that we don't communicate among departments too often. You know, we are working in silos, and that is a problem. And so we need to provide a way to break those silos and start talking about common themes across the board that affect us all. So one of the examples that Dr. Somerville, Chuck brought up is the fact that the departments or the colleges of science, we tend to work really well with the education colleges. And that's because we know that education colleges have access to those K-12 teachers. And we are trying to reach out that audience, and sometimes it's difficult to convince them to come and do a camp on our campus because they already have summer vacations planned or whatever reason. So, so that partnership with the College of Education might actually bring us more opportunities in terms of delivering this content that we want the science teachers to have and get, like Chuck said, get them excited about it. So one of the things that I'm going to make a disclaimer, and Julie is there, Seraphine. We recently worked in the plan, in the science and technology plan for the entire state. And we did identify that issue as one of the issues that we need to work a little better as it relates to statewide. We need to make sure that our science teachers are better prepared, and that all the universities actually jump in and help in that regard. So that's going to be key to moving forward this state.
Sue Ann, Dr. Diana Phillips, who is a brand spanking new provost here at Fairmont State, just joined us, and she might be able to shed a little bit more from other institutions on what we've been talking about. If you, I hate to put you on the spot, but I saw you pop up there and thought maybe you can contribute.
Perhaps I could contribute if I could get my unmute button unmuted. I think all of the ideas, quite frankly, that I'm hearing here, I was just getting ready to send Erica, Professor Harvey, a thank you note for inviting me to this session. I have seen at the different institutions that I've been at, different iterations of many of the things that you talk about. But I wrote a note, Professor Dr. Toledo, that your comment about departments working in silos. To be honest with you folks, every institution that I have ever been at in higher education worked in silos. And I put like big exclamation points around that, because we know that when we come together and have conversations and we listen to our students and we bring the faculty together to engage in brainstorming and share information, that we come up with more creativity. So my comment, I can't say that I'm adding much depth, but just to validate my higher ed experience, and it's pushing up on 30 years in higher education. And I am also a first generation college student from West Virginia, the southern part of West Virginia. And so not too far from Marshall University, actually. I grew up in Wayne County, West Virginia. These kinds of initiatives, when Professor Harvey invited, we had a meeting a week or so ago about this initiative, the First Two Network. I was just completely enthralled, I think is the word that I would use about this kind of activity. So I guess I just have to say, let's do more of this. Let's do more of this. But not just talk, action has to happen as well. Talk is good, brainstorming is good, ideas are good. Action has to be the outcome.
Thank you. That was awesome. Other people on the panel want to weigh in on your thoughts on how we can work together to overcome this siloed phenomenon that is just the reality in all of our institutions if we want to improve persistence of our students.
I think we just have to incentivize the groups to get together, and and one way that will impact students is when faculty get together and form collaborative teams. So here in Morgantown we have the multiple campuses, but it's not that you just have to sort of pick up the phone and talk to your counterparts in the other colleges, and you can start those conversations. And so we just try to focus on certain projects. For example, community health. It's perhaps not part of the core STEM discipline, but it's still super important, right? And it impacts everybody, and it can trickle down to students. And so it's just breaking down those barriers and facilitating meetings with faculty across campus. It's and then that leads to some seed funding awards that the colleges can support. So that we find those are often useful if we can just focus on a small topic.
Just add one quick thing, because I know we probably want to move on, but we do a lot of that cross-disciplinary efforts in our honors college. So when we create honors courses, those are by definition cross-disciplinary courses, and that brings people together from different points of view on the same topic. So there might be a course on plagues where, as I as a microbiologist would talk about the molecular biology of the pathogen, and a sociologist would talk about how a plague impacts how society reacts to a plague, things like that. So that's one way. The boring answer is that as administrators, we can incentivize that kind of work by saying, we can write it into our workload policies. If you devise a course with a person in a different department or college, we'll give you a reassigned time from a course for the next semester or something. So it can sometimes be as boring as just that kind of administrative lever.
And I was going to chime in that, yeah, from a faculty perspective, finding the time to do the outreach and stuff, if there was emphasis coming down from the administrative level that this was important, then they would help prioritize that in our workload. And without that, it's really difficult.
Very good practical thoughts there that I think are more actionable than some others, you know, so we like to hear the practical considerations as well, for sure. Thank you for that. I think, Deb, do you want to?
Sure,
move?
let's switch up gears just a little bit. And we in higher ed are always concerned with engaging students and faculty. And we have a really strong working group that is doing a lot of improvement science studies around this. We're curious on the various campuses, what opportunities are available on your campus for students to develop relationships with faculty other than just the one-on-one classroom interaction?
So I was always one of those students who sat in the front row. So excuse me for always having my hand up. You know, I think there's probably everybody in this group will enthusiastically support the idea that undergraduate research is a game changer. How you connect students with faculty members in really meaningful and continuing ways. And classes are you know, usually the introduction to that. A student, if a faculty member talks about their research in class, students will get interested in it. But what we need to do better here at Marshall is have a clearinghouse where students can come. They can come and talk to me, but they often won't. We need a better way to get students connected with those faculty mentors, because it's a game changer for both students and faculty.
I think just programming. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Duncan. Go ahead.
I think just departmental programming of social events is often underrated. And you know, of course, we've been forced to be online in the last year, but you know, people have been able to still get together in creative ways. But you know, going forward, I think just getting the students off campus to interact with faculty in a social setting can really go a long way. You know, it can just bring groups within a department. It can bring groups together who wouldn't otherwise, you know, talk to one another and perhaps lead to a student, you know, finding a research project and you know, and getting in, you know, getting that start that will keep them in the game. So any chance of increasing the number of social events, it's just people's time, and that's the.
I often said to myself that I never really got to know my students until I took them to Green Bank. Then I got to know my students.
I was going to say that one of the most direct impacts between a student and a professor is the advising or the mentoring component. So one of the things that we are discussing here at State is how to do more effective advising for the students. I saw one of the comments from one of the students where she got excited about math through the fact that she understood how math can actually help on the statistics component and how statistics is going to help her career, advance her career as it relates to STEM or even non-STEM degrees. So I think that each student has different ways to learn. And so the advising component, the mentoring component is important so that we can understand how the student is learning. You know, I remember I was intimidated with math. I was an engineering program, and I was a little intimidated with math. And so I noticed that one of my professors was a traditional teacher. So he taught me math in a very straight way. And so I was a little intimidated by that. But then I have a different professor that taught me applied mathematics. And that's when I understood math, because now I understood how mathematics was applied to different components of engineering. And that piqued my interest by having two professors teaching me in a different direction. So Through the mentoring component, I think what we need to do is to investigate with the student as to what is your preference as it relates to learning. How would you learn a little better if we change the way that we teach?
We have some excellent comments in the chat from students. I would just encourage you to take a look at those if you're not speaking. Yeah, Natalie mentions one-on-one mentor system with graduate students or professors to interact socially. And Brittany said that she did something like that at a local restaurant. They were surprised at the level of interest from the greater community. Jordan says it's very important for students to meet faculty at universities, as more difficult at larger ones for freshmen to find those connections. She likes Natalie's idea. And then, golly, was it Alicia? Who was that? I'm losing them now because more are coming in, but somebody said that they also want to have the opportunity to meet with administrators, provosts, and deans, and people that are at that level as well. Yeah, if anybody... Ashley, thank you, Ashley. So have we missed any of those comments in there? Take a look at those. They're popping in.
I'll just jump in real quick here and say, and on my theme of never waste a good crisis, we have an opportunity now, if we think creatively. Everybody is hungry for human connection. Everybody is hungry for the building those networks like we heard about yesterday because of this COVID pandemic. So if we think about this carefully and creatively, I think we can capitalize on that this fall and next January to actually build some of this stuff that we're talking about. Boy, wouldn't that be nice to do? Nice to do. People are hungry for it now.
You are so right about that. Okay, very good. Thank you, Sean. Wonderful. So we have only a few minutes left. And so I would like to move to a final question for thoughts from people, and then we'll start to get some reflections in the chat. And so I guess I could end with a softball question here.
That's so unlike you.
I know, but I started out with a really hard one. And so I think that there's one in our list here about one or two things that we could do together to enable this kind of conversation between institutions to flourish after the meeting is over, because we know that that's kind of hard to do. So panelists, if you have one or two ideas for things we could change to enable this sort of collaborative discussion and action to flourish between institutions, let us know your thoughts.
Well, so this particular forum and this format, is there a reason why we shouldn't be doing it at least every year, every semester? You know, now that we found the virtual world, and then it's a little cheaper to do that. Actually, we should actually think about having an in-person meeting in a couple of years. But right now, we should continue these conversations, these forums. I think they're very useful. If we do that, I'm for sure going to invite more faculty to be part of these conversations.
So if we have it, you will come.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In West Virginia, do you create affinity groups? Are you familiar with that concept among institutions? So sort of a possibility of a STEM affinity group continuing this panel discussion forward? Just a thought.
Some of us are familiar with the term affinity group for sure. Chuck or Dunk or Stephen, any one or two things we could do to enable collaboration to flourish between institutions on this idea of STEM or persistence?
Yeah, I think that, Ulysses hit the nail on the head, that now that we've kind of uncovered this capability that we all had but never used, this kind of thing becomes much easier. And the thing I'd add to that is there's an organization that's been around for about 40 years now called the Ohio River Basin Consortium for Research and Education. Most of the state, this would leave out the Eastern Panhandle, so sorry for you folks out there, but you could still join. But the Ohio River, that group brings together representatives from various universities in the basin, the Ohio River Basin, and it's a great forum for students to present their work, to meet people from other institutions if they want to go on for graduate school. We do get some industry that comes there so they can start building their network for professional development. But I like the idea of having that. It's a very collaborative environment. People make research connections, but we can also make those kind of meetings specifically about best practices in education as well. It's in the name, and it should be part of what we do.
Nice, thank you.
I'd also like to add that on the new track 1 that's going out hopefully this summer, one of the things in the broader participation section will be an underrepresented group affinity group throughout the state to start building a support network for those students, and the sort of plan is to spend about 2 years building that network and then start having annual networking conferences for these groups that would really hopefully bring together a lot of resources and people from the state to show opportunities.
And speaking of research groups, our presentations, West Virginia Academy of Science would be a site. The annual meeting could be, we did it this year, hosted the first 2 network and had a wonderful interaction with that. And so I think that looking at that and taking advantage of this entity that already exists that has an annual meeting could also help the West Virginia Academy of Science maintain as an entity, but also would be useful to integrate across institutions and have a good conversation.
Excellent, thank you.
One thought I had real quick, I was really impressed with the undergraduate research day at the Capitol this year, which is, was all done remotely. And there's such a lot of effort that goes into that. And it's, students from all across the state participate. And then, things get archived, but then all of that sort of energy kind of goes away. I was just wondering if there's a way to invite those students back throughout the year at some forum that would it be able to engage their local communities. If you did this in person, right, you would go down here at Morgantown, you'd rent out the local theater and have an event. I wonder if you could program that somehow, either in person or online, and just keep that, keep all of that effort and get it out to that broader audience.
Excellent. I'm game. So in the chat, I have posted a question to just give you a few minutes as we're going to wrap up with final comments from our panelists. And Scott, feel free to join us as a ad hoc panelist, and anybody else that's in a sort of administrative role can give some thoughts as well. So while that is happening, if those of you that are in the session want to put into the chat what are some things you've heard in the session that you would be willing to implement on your campus, put those in the chat right now. So if there are final thoughts from our panelists, we'll have you offer those now. And Scott from D&E, do you want to give a final thought? You've been listening more than speaking, but that might have presented you with some opportunity to have some reflections.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. And like I said in the chat, please do not forget about those in student affairs, because we're all in this together. It takes a village to support our students. And who says that you can't make science fun with student activities. For example, put the science to axe throwing. Yeah, that's what I said. And I think you could be amazed what could happen if everyone just gets creative and has some fun. And I think that's one of the key takeaways coming off the COVID-19 pandemic. It forced us to all do things differently. And I think those that were able to get creative, lean in and get the job done, I think that is ultimately in the best interest of our students in West Virginia. So I don't really have much more to add, but again, thank you for the opportunity.
Jose?
Yes, so I was just thinking about, there's so much feedback on the chat. And I already saved the chat because I want to go through all that feedback.
Yeah.
I already heard from some students in my campus about really cool feedback that I want to bring to the cabinet actually, so that we can start thinking about ways to help this community. The other thing is that I would love to see a conversation where we can bring student perspective, faculty perspective, industry perspective in this same type of forum, if we can do that. Thank you.
Have to jump in here because that was such a great segue, Dr. Toledo. The next session starts at 11:30 and it is geared towards student support people. If you are student affairs, you're going to be talking to students. So you'll get to hear from students at West Virginia State, at Fairmont, at Marshall, at WVU, all of our partner institutions. The students will be there and they will present about their experiences using student support and what they would like to see. So all of you have touched on it. That is the very next session. If you can, please join it. You will not be disappointed. You will be awakened. It will bring so much value to the work that you're doing. So I just had to add that plug. It starts at 11:30.
And Joanna put the link in earlier in the chat. So if you scroll back up, you can find the Zoom link.
Put it in again, Joanna. Other final thoughts
cue.
from our panelists? Sarah, how about you?
I thought this was very valuable. I loved hearing from different institutions because we're all confronting the same problems. And, you know, there's not going to, we know there's not one universal solution. So yeah, I think, doing this again and brainstorming with each other is very valuable.
Dunk?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity this morning to sit in and I learned a lot, and I particularly like the idea of developing a first generation club, or multiple clubs depending on different disciplines. I think that would really be a useful thing. I'll certainly be. I've been jotting down some notes here and to be talking to my dean afterwards and finding out more about some of the things that I didn't know, and some of the questions that were posted. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks for hosting the panel. It was great. I'm just going to say 2 words that I got out of the chat: nerdy parties. That's our answer. Nerdy parties.
Thanks, Caitlin.
I was going to just make my hypothesis because I had not looked at the chat, but I was going to guess Caitlin Alley, who is our evaluator, and she is pithy. Chuck, do you want to give us the last word?
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. This panel reminded me, and all the great information in the chat reminded me that we always make better decisions when we get a more diverse people around the table. So different backgrounds, and it's so hard for us because we think we know what we're doing, and we think that we can make those decisions, by ourselves with our few trusted friends. And then when we reach out, we learn we don't know nearly what we think we know. So thanks to everybody, because there's just great information in the chat, and thanks for all the rest of the panelists. I learned a bunch today.
Awesome. All right, Jade, turning it back over to you.
This has been incredible. Oh my goodness. So I put in the chat a few times, and I'm doing it again, a link to our brief survey. It'll take less than 2 minutes for you to complete. But as you're doing that, I just want to give praise to all of the panelists. Thank you all so much for just adding your experience and your input and your perspective. This, I mean, I can't express enough how awesome this was. Let's continue this conversation. Let's put these ideas to work. That's what the First Two Network is about. Sharing what we're doing so that we can do it on other campuses, right? As Dr. Toledo said, STEM student retention is a United States issue, and we are falling behind in competition with other countries because we're not retaining our students. And so if we want to do that, in the state of West Virginia, it's going to take West Virginians, right? We can't work in silos anymore. It's not effective. So doing things like this and putting ideas to work is effective. And so thank you so much for coming to this session and sharing your thoughts. As I'm talking, I'm hoping that you're filling out that survey, and I will remind you again, please join the next session that starts at 11:30. You will hear from the student leaders of the First Two Network, all of whom come from your campus. So if you were interested in hearing what your students have to say at Marshall or at Fairmont or Glenville, your students will be in the next session and they will share their ideas with you. So be sure to be there. Joanna, would you like to add anything else to that?
I was just giving all my glows in my review right there. I just want to say how impactful it is on behalf of all of our students who've been messaging me as well, that all of our panelists were here today. Don't know if your schedule affords you to come to the next session, but regardless of if it is or if it doesn't, the very least our 6 partner campuses who are already fully on board with MOUs. So you could discuss that with Jade, but most of you here have a First Two campus club. So you have student leaders that are well-resourced, would really love for you to come to one of their club meetings and will buy the food. But we would really love to get these connections rolling early. Our students are learning so much about small tweaks that could happen on your campus to better support first generation and underrepresented students in their first 2 years. And I think together we could make some rapid, low overhead, high yield changes. So just huge thanks on behalf of our students of this network.
All right, you've got 3 minutes back to your day. Look at that. Thank you guys so much. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Please join us at the next session if you can. If not, take care and please keep in touch.